What if the key to unlocking a whole new life is hidden in a part of yourself you've pretty much forgotten about? Now, before we get into it, if you enjoy stories like this one, please follow the channel and share this story. It really does help this page grow, and it lets me create more stories just like this for you. All right, let's get into her story.
So let's talk about Maya. Picture this, late at night, in an office building. The only sound is the hum of those awful fluorescent lights. Outside, the world is moving, it's alive. But her world? It's just a sea of spreadsheets. Every single click of her mouse feels like a second ticking away on a life that's just stuck. And she keeps asking herself the same question over and over. Is this really it?
So that night, running on fumes and some seriously bad office coffee, she's just endlessly scrolling through job sites. You know how it is, all the titles just start to blur together. It's the same dead-end job, just with a different logo at the top. But then, one listing. One title just cuts right through all that noise. Bilingual Client Solutions Specialist. She kind of glances over the requirements. Problem solving? Check. Collaborative? Yep. Client-facing? She could totally do that. And then she sees it. The last line, in bold. Fluency in Spanish required. Spanish. A language she hadn't really spoken since she was a kid. A piece of her identity she'd basically packed away in a dusty box in the attic. Her first thought was to just keep scrolling. But this tiny, little voice in her head just said, what if? So she took a deep breath and she hit apply. And you know what? She actually got an interview, which was frankly a total shock. But that shock quickly turned into, oh no, now I actually have to do this. Maya knew this couldn't just be about cramming some vocabulary. No, this was a battle against all that self-doubt that had built up for years. This interview was going to be the performance of her life. She needed a battle plan. And this is where things get really smart. Maya had this realization that an interview is basically just storytelling. You're the hero, and your past jobs are the chapters of your story. She found this thing called the STAR Method: situation, task, action, result. It's a way to take a boring answer and turn it into a compelling little story. It was her script, and she was determined to nail her part. For 2 straight weeks, Maya was completely zoned in. She was obsessed. She researched every question she could find, and here's the genius part. She learned how to reframe her old job. That boring, mind-numbing data entry role, suddenly it became a goldmine of stories about her incredible attention to detail, about how she found critical errors that nobody else saw, and how she made her team more efficient. She got ready for those classic questions, the ones that are really designed to see how you think. Before, a question like this would have sent her into a total panic. I mean, what complex problems? She just typed numbers into a computer all day? But now, with this new way of thinking, she saw her old job completely differently. And this was the big shift. She figured out that you don't describe your tasks, you showcase your impact. So I'm good at finding errors turned into, I saved my team a whole week of work. See? The job itself didn't change at all, but the story she told about it, that changed everything. She wasn't a data clerk anymore, she was a problem solver. But okay, here's the kicker. The real final boss. It wasn't enough to have these great stories. She had to tell them, convincingly, in a language that felt like a distant memory. This wasn't just about knowing the words. It was about sounding confident, natural, authentic. She was literally talking to herself in the car, in the kitchen, turning every thought into a Spanish rehearsal. All right, so interview day arrives. You can just picture it, right? The office is all glass and steel, super intimidating. The interviewer, a sharp guy named Mr. Reyes, gives her this firm handshake. This is it. No turning back now. And you know what? The first half of the interview, she was crushing it. All that prep was paying off. She was nailing the STAR method, her stories were landing, and she could actually see Mr. Reyes nodding along, looking impressed. For the first time, maybe ever, she felt like she actually belonged there. And then he gives her this little smile. And his next words just flipped a switch. Now, let's speak in Spanish. He said it so calmly, but for Maya, it was like a thunderclap. Her heart immediately started hammering in her chest. All that work, all that practice, it all came down to right now. Mr. Reyes leans in, looks her right in the eye, and asks the one question that could make or break everything. What is the most important quality for this role? And for a solid, terrifying second, nothing. Her mind just went completely blank. All those perfectly rehearsed lines, gone.
The panic starts to creep in, that cold feeling. But then she looks at Mr. Reyes, and she doesn't see an interrogator, she just sees genuine curiosity. And in that instant, something shifted. She decided, forget the script. She took one deep breath to ground herself, and she just spoke from the heart.
She said the most important quality is empathy, to understand the person behind the problem. She went on to explain that staring at spreadsheets for years taught her something profound, that behind every single error, every number, every single problem, there was a human being. Her rusty Spanish was flowing, and it was carrying a truth she didn't even know she had. When she walked out of that building into the sunshine, she felt light. It was the strangest feeling. It almost didn't even matter if she got the job anymore, because in that room, she didn't just prove she could speak Spanish, she proved to herself that she had something important to say. The language, it was never the actual skill. It was just the key that opened the door. Then came the waiting game, which is the absolute worst, right? A whole week of silence. Every time her phone buzzed, her heart jumped. She started to convince herself that she'd imagined it all, that that moment of connection in the interview was just in her head. And then an email popped up, and the subject line said everything she needed to know. It was real. She actually did it. She just stared at those words on the screen until they started to get blurry. And get this, it wasn't just a new job title. The offer came with a 40% salary increase. 40%. It was like the world was finally giving her a tangible receipt that said, yes, you are this valuable. It was the validation she'd finally learned how to ask for. So when you really think about it, this story isn't about Spanish at all, is it? The language was just the catalyst, the thing that kicked everything off. The real story here is about Maya discovering these strengths that were buried inside her all along. Her empathy, her grit, her courage to tell a new story about herself. It really just leaves you with this one powerful thought. Sometimes the heaviest doors are opened with keys we've had all along. If this story moved you or made you think differently, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And make sure to follow the channel for more stories just like this.